Hello everybody and welcome to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. It's Corey and of course it is the Crystal Palace versus West Ham United predicted 11 and score prediction video. Of course we're going to Selhurst Park tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Back-to-back wins. We're going into this game with a lot of confidence. Fantastic performance in the FA Cup. I think we're really on the up this season. We've given a few key players a couple of rests ahead of this game. I think we go into this game with confidence, with fitness. And fingers crossed we can undo Palace. Because to be fair, last time, I've rewatched the game and I think they had us in the first half. I think their press got us a little bit. We were a little bit too defensive-minded, but you see the second half, the press was better. We brought on Manu, and obviously we began to create more chances, and we obviously got that fantastic Sebastian Haller goal. Before we get started, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe if you're new to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. Just for a heads up, this is just going to be a predicted 11 video, so I'm going to give you some key tendencies of some players, and then I'm going to bring out the tactical breakdown where I'll have all of the different tactics, counter-press, attacking tendencies, Crystal Palace in possession and how to beat them. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be in tandem with this one. So let's get on to the Crystal Palace predicted 11 for tomorrow. I believe Vicente Guaita will be in goal. Again, I think he's a fantastic keeper. Great shot stopper. Again, I expect West Ham to put him under pressure. Aerially, I think we're fantastic from set pieces, but Crystal Palace are brilliant as well. You look at their defensive shape in terms of having a narrow back four, the aerial ability of some of the players that we're going to see tomorrow as well, all defensive minded, all going to make it difficult for West Ham to get shots off on this guy. And West Ham tend to get shots, particularly in the box, creating numbers, creating overloads and putting them under pressure. So last time we didn't have too much success. Obviously, we did get that Sebastian Haller goal from a delivery from Soufal, and that was pushing them out of position. Again, if West Ham are going to do the same thing, we're going to have to really rely on that press when we're trying to get shots in on Vicente Guaita. But listen, fantastic keeper, great shot stopper, and a free transfer a couple of years ago. He's clearly value for money. So we've got to test him. I'm sure we will. Right back will be Joel Ward. I think they've played James Tomkins there, to be fair, a couple of times since we played them. Joel Ward will come in. He obviously played against West Ham last time. Interestingly enough, on that right-hand side, he's not going to advance. And I said that, and I understand he had the delivery in for Christian Benteke. There, when you rewatch that goal, I think Pablo Fornals's position, particularly coming a little bit inverted, allowed him to create that width. And listen, Palace will push forward their fullbacks if they are in possession, if they've pressed us back far enough. But generally speaking, he's a conservative defender. He can get pulled out of place a little bit. I guess the fact of the matter is he doesn't have that mobility and that natural pace. You look down that left-hand side, I think having someone like a Pablo Fornals suited him. That's why you see Said Benrahma come to the left-hand side, someone that can take him on and try and pull him out of position and allow West Ham to get bodies forward. It'll be interesting to see how David Moyes tries to counter that tomorrow by pushing Crystal Palace back. Again, he'll create that narrow back four as well. He'll tuck in and he'll allow someone on that right-hand side in Andros Townsend to go and try and press the ball and give him a little bit of protection. But again, he's someone that West Ham can target and should target. Offensively, he's not going to hurt us too much. But nonetheless, decent in the air, good delivery. Definitely someone we should watch out for, particularly if Palace start to get in our half and get a little bit of possession. The right-sided centre-back will be Scott Dann. Again, I know they've played Kouyate in there. I know they've played James Tomkins in there. I believe Scott Dann will play. Again, he played against West Ham last time. Mobility is an issue for both these centre-backs. And I don't think Roy Hodgson's hiding the fact that when he's almost creating two defensive pivots in front of them, yes, he'll push them on, but they are conservative in their press. It is about protecting his back four that lack mobility at times. And it's going to make it difficult for West Ham to try and attack centrally, particularly in transition. And that's why you see in the wide areas, West Ham were able to get quite a bit of joy. Scott Dann obviously isn't the quickest. He is good in the air. I think it's defensive organisation, to be honest, that Roy Hodgson's employed for this back four that saves them a little bit. There are tendencies to get in behind them. Of course, I would be looking at someone like Mikel Antonio. Now we have him back in the side to try and stretch him out of position a little bit. Equally, if we can commit a Thomas Soufal and push him out of position, we could try and employ that tactic. I think something that I saw was really interesting from the Crystal Palace-Manchester City game was the fact that they slotted in the two defensive pivots either side of the centre-backs. Again, that leaves a lot of space in front of the box, but it does give them massive protection, particularly in players trying to get in behind. So possibly Crystal Palace could use that tactic. But again, Roy Hodgson makes no mistake. He has to protect the two centre-backs, so expect him to do so. On the left-hand side is Gary Cahill. Again, very similar, very accomplished defender, good in the air. Obviously, he's got a lot of experience, particularly with his time at Chelsea. I rate him particularly as a centre-back. I think West Ham really, aerially, they're a massive challenge, aren't they, Gary Cahill and Scott Dann? It's not going to be easy for Mikel Antonio, particularly in the air. And I think West Ham's best chance of trying to create chances in this game is getting in beyond or using deliveries. It's going to be hard to hit them on transition because of their conservatism towards it. Again, they're not going to commit too many bodies forward. Cahill, again, position is quite good. He is a leader who organised that defence. And you think naturally in a defensive shape, it's going to be difficult to break down those two centre-backs. But I guess there's weakness in transition. I guess there's weakness in terms of pace. Possibly if you've got Jarrod Bowen coming off the right-hand side in that counter-attack, can possibly exploit and drag them out of position. The issue, of course, is naturally Roy Hodgson's used his two defensive midfielders to press individually rather than the centre-backs doing so. So they will always try and keep their shape. And it makes it very, very difficult. And it's not very interesting, but I'm sure West Ham and David Moyes will come up with a tactic, as I'll explain later. On the left-hand side, Tyrick Mitchell. Again, it's an interesting one. I thought Patrick Van Aanholt would play, and I think Patrick Van Aanholt has greater tendencies to try and get forward, particularly down that left-hand side, and that's a huge strength for Palace down that left, and I'll go on to explain that. I think Tyrick Mitchell doesn't offer the same offensive overlapping runs. I think defensively, he's probably better than Van Aanholt. Interestingly, when you've got the back four trying to come in a little bit central and allowing the winger to do it, I feel that Tyrick Mitchell's positioning and pace and awareness means that he can go and close down and restrict the space. And it doesn't mean that Eze has to play a deeper role at times. And it obviously can help Crystal Palace in the counter. So again, I can see why I was going to say David Moyes. I can see why Roy Hodgson's employed him in that role. He's a young lad. He's come from Brentford. I am impressed with him. I do think he gives Palace a little bit of solidity down that left-hand side and allows their attacking players to drive forward. But certainly, I'd expect him to try and tuck back in maybe into a back four. But I think because of his athleticism, because of his pace and his positioning, he's more than happy to go and press. So it isn't going to be an easy afternoon, particularly looking at Vladimir Coufal and trying to create overlapping runs because Tyrick Mitchell will go and meet him and allow Eze to almost play in that free role. Let's get to the midfield. Obviously, this is a 4-4-2 as last time. Andros Townsend caused us a couple of issues with his inverted runs. Again, you'll see from both of these wide players, they're obviously used to go and press the opposition wide players when they're in the defensive shape. When they're in possession, they'll create the inverted runs, particularly Andros Townsend. I think we associate him as someone that's obviously, he's got a bit of pace that will try and use the width a little bit. But again, he likes to come in central because he's coming in onto his left. Naturally, he can make runs from deep, he can beat players. And the interesting thing about Townsend as well from an attacking perspective is that he will try and create almost a front two for Crystal Palace when Zaha and Eze have got the ball and they're dragged out of position. And it's a way that Roy Hodgson ensures that there are always two men within the box and deals with that. And I think tactically and positionally, they're quite switched on. Townsend, again, was a little bit problematic. You were seeing Pablo Fornals coming back into a central position in order to deal with him and then vacated Ward to allow him to get that cross in for Benteke. So if Pablo Fornals does play, I'm interested to see how he deals with him and also how Creswell tries to push out and deal with the wide fullback if Palace can push on. But I am impressed with, I like Townsend as a player generally. I think he's got a good shot on him. He's got good delivery. And again, he'll look to use the wide players, even in inverted positions, to try and get deliveries into the box and create a little bit of havoc against West Ham. But obviously, we've got very strong aerial players, so we should be able to deal with it. Famous last words. Let's get on to the other two centre midfielders. James McCarthur. For me, James McCarthur is okay on the ball. He isn't going to spray passes. I'm not convinced on his passing range. He presses and he works hard. His work rate and his work ethic, he does exactly what Roy Hodgson wants him to do, close the space. You'll see in the defensive shape between him and Milivojevic, one of them will go and press and the other will sit. And that is to give a little bit of solidity to that back four. Defence is the main priority, I think, for Roy Hodgson, despite having an array of attacking talent. McCarthy's the workhorse in that midfield. It looks to try and push West Ham. It does give an opportunity, particularly when West Ham push the midfield attacking three in inverting positions, to get him behind it and exploit the fact that Hodgson wants his midfielders to go and press the ball down and protect his defence. So I'll be interested to see how West Ham counter that. I felt like first half against Palace last time, we didn't do enough. We sat back at times. I think if we can progress Thomas Souček and get Ben Rama in between the lines, it is going to cause some issues. And I think it is going to give them a few question marks and ask a few questions that inevitably West Ham can take advantage of. Whether we can get it behind that really narrow, low block defence of Crystal Palace, I'm uncertain, but it will give us chances in the final third. Milivojevic, again, in the centre midfield position, probably the better player, I think. Better passing range, good set-piece delivery. Fantastic shot from distance. I like him as a player. He's aggressive in the tackle. I think we know that from some of his red cards over the past couple of years. But again, I think he's the better of the two. He'll look to progress a little bit more. I think it's because he's technically a little bit more sound. But don't expect either of these two centre midfielders to press up too high. Again, the function of them is to be a defensive foil for those two centre backs, because we know about the mobility, and they'll keep their position very centrally. They won't try and progress. They won't try and create overloads. They'll very rarely take shots from distance. Roy Hodgson has created a side that has a really strong defensive base and tries to give a little bit of license to his attacking players in order to create chances and get goals. But I'm interested to see how West Ham deal with that midfield. I'll get onto it in the tactical breakdown, but certainly it is a very functional midfield. Expect them to operate in almost pivot roles. And yes, of course, naturally, they will press in an attacking position, but they won't try and create any late additional runs. I like this player. I've always liked this player, Eberechi. I think he's done fantastic for Crystal Palace. He's grown. You see him from his set pieces, his runs from deep, his ball carries as well. He's very, very strong on the ball. It's going to be hard for West Ham. I think the issue with somebody like him and both Townsend in starting in deep positions and using their paces, whether to press or whether to sit off, I think that was a question asked of them, particularly in that first half against Palace. I'd be interested to see whether West Ham try and take that risk and try and push up on somebody like Eze, knowing full well that he can go and get in behind. They're very, very strong on this left-hand side. I think they were even stronger when they had Van Aanholt. Obviously, Roy Hodgson's sort of adopted a more solid defensive base with someone like a Tyrick Mitchell, but certainly Eze will look to link up with Zaha, who has natural left-hand-sided tendencies to link up and join play. It means they're a little bit more fluid on that side. Expect him to jink in past, expect him to come in a bit central. I think West Ham in a defensive shape can deal with him, if I'm honest. The problem is the movement around him from Zaha and the link-up play. He's a very intelligent player, Eberechi Eze, and obviously it's clear to see why he's a talisman for them. And it's going to be a tough afternoon. I'll get onto the tactical breakdown, how West Ham can try and deal with him, but it's never easy. I think one thing I would say is, even though he's relatively quick and he's good in carrying the ball, he isn't blistering in terms of his pace. His movement is from deep. It's very rarely on the last line. That will benefit West Ham, particularly in a high press. But again, he's lethal, and it is his link up with Zaha that's the difference. I've gone out on a limb here and I've read all the injury news. I think Zaha could be a doubt, but I don't think it's confirmed. I think if they can get Wilfred Zaha out, naturally they will. He's a fantastic player. What was really interesting for me rewatching the Palace-Leicester game is his movement as well from crosses. I think you associate, particularly when Palace are in a defensive shape, or even when they press up, to be fair, he's happy to come deep. You know, we talk about it as a conventional 4-4-2. Really, it's more of a 4-4-1-1. With a player, with a striker, either Ayew or Benteke, keeping that central position. And that's why I'm really interested in terms of that left-hand side, the link-up between Eze and Zaha. Zaha's ability to go in beyond the man, but he can equally run from deep, allowing Eze to come in a little bit central. So they can create problems from West Ham down that right-hand side. Zaha can't really operate as a number 9. It's never been in this game, of course. Naturally, he's been a winger. He'll try and take on Vladimir Soufal if he can and use Eze to link up play and force West Ham out of position. I think West Ham, particularly in terms of a back four, I always had concerns switching back to that system, but I think we've been a little bit more conservative. We're a little bit more switched on now. Unfortunately, you'd have to look at that right-hand side, particularly with somebody like a Craig Dawson, given the mobility that Zaha has, how he's going to deal for him. So he's going to need natural protection from somebody like a Declan Rice. But I thought Declan in the last game against Palace did quite well in dealing with Zaha, and naturally he does expect that. But I think, it's not to say you can't fear somebody like Zaha, because I think when he gets in front of goals, sometimes he misses chances. Sometimes he can be absolutely lethal. But I think if you can force him into deep positions, despite his pace, you can try and isolate him a little bit, because Palace won't try and push up as a side, particularly if West Ham press on them. And it will force Zaha and Eze into deep pockets. And yes, of course, they can drive, but I think it isn't. We associate that high line of West Ham, particularly with someone like Craig Dawson, as being exploited. Not only, of course, is he going to have Declan Rice in front of him, but you're going to be asking Zaha to carry the ball over a long distance and hope someone like an Ayew can make that run. It won't happen like that. So West Ham have to take a couple of risks in this structurally. But listen, Zaha can hurt us. There's no question. I'm not going to sit here and deny it. But I think West Ham will have enough to deal with him. Fingers crossed. And the other man, I think, sort of went between, is it Mateta? Could it possibly be Christian Benteke? I've settled on Andre Ayew. I think there's rumours that Benteke could be going to West Brom, which would be, I would prefer personally. I think he does offer that aerial threat, Benteke. I know Diop got a little bit done on the movement from that cross, but Benteke, if he plays, keeps a central position, will look to try and get on chances. Obviously, like I said, Townsend can create the inverted run, particularly when they're so prominent on that left-hand side. He will have somebody else to work with. Andre Ayew is slightly different. I look at him as a player that isn't as good in the air, but I think he does play in that hold-up striker role. He doesn't have blistering pace either, and I think this is the thing that's hurting Palace and probably the reason why they brought in Mateta. It's giving them more fluidity in terms of that transition and playing in a low block. And you look at Andre Ayew, yes, he can keep the ball, but you'd feel that West Ham particularly have the athleticism of Declan Rice and Souček, and the way that we obviously force numbers back in terms of Jarrod Bowen and Fornals into those wide pockets. I can't see Andre Ayew getting too much space in this game. I know he has form against West Ham. I know he is a decent finisher, to be fair to him. I don't see him getting too many opportunities. He's not going to try and run in behind West Ham. They are going to be very reliant on someone like a Zaha making that movement, and possibly if West Ham are forced out of that position, someone like Andre, we all know about Andre, but Jordan Ayew will find some space. So I'm not too concerned. I imagine he'll play, and at times it'll probably feel like they're playing a little bit in a 4-4-1-1. Listen, they're a good side, Palace. I think that they're a good side because they're really well organised. They can nick a goal, particularly through players like Zaha, Eze, Benteke as well, we've seen recently. So you can't really write them off. I think the problem is, and always has been the problem with someone like a Palace, is breaking them down, particularly when they're in that shape. I think West Ham ultimately have to press in order to stop them getting possession in our half, getting deliveries into the box, creating any chances. And to be fair, I know they did create chances against us, but they weren't clear cut. They weren't getting in behind. And possibly it's because we were dropping a little bit deep. But I feel like West Ham need to try and pin back Crystal Palace. I think we've got enough numbers, particularly in attacking positions, particularly now with Mikel Antonio instead of Sebastian Haller playing, to try and get in behind, to try and force an issue, to try and create little pockets of space and movement that possibly we can hurt them from open play, as well as set pieces and deliveries. But let's get into the West Ham predicted 11. Probably no surprises in here, but let's run through as we always do. Lucas Fabianski in goal. Happy to see him back in goal for West Ham. A bit perplexed why he was being taken off for Nathan Trott, but listen, I like Fabianski. I think in this game it's suiting him a little bit more, to be honest, from open play. If Christian Benteke doesn't play, there isn't too much area ability. I think it's more of a concern from a defensive standpoint in terms of Zaha trying to get in behind and linking up with Eze, possibly a late run at the back post from someone like an Andros Townsend. But in terms of set pieces and real threats, I think West Ham could be comfortable. I know we've got that problem a little bit with zonal marking at times, and Palace are very strong and they've got real strong aerial presences in opposition boxes, but I feel like Fabianski will be protected generally from open play, and there is enough sort of deficiencies, particularly with the lack of Christian Benteke if he doesn't play, that he can have a relatively comfortable afternoon. I always say and I always think, something's going to happen. Let's get to the right back position. There will be no shocks here. Vladimir Coufal dealt very well with Wilfred Zaha last time. Again, it's such a task for Vladimir Coufal down that right. I think, you've got Eze and Zaha and the link up. I think the benefit is Patrick Van Aanholt's not in the side if he doesn't start again. So you are restricting the sort of numbers getting forward to only 2. I think he's going to rely on Declan Rice supporting him, and obviously Jarrod Bowen, who's got a fantastic work rate, and he's actually positioning quite central, is very good as we've seen in recent weeks. So be looking to nullify one-on-one. I don't think Eze or Zaha are going to try and get in beyond in terms of being direct and keeping the width. They will try and come central, both of them. So a slightly easier afternoon in terms of dealing with pace. But again, Zaha is very, very unpredictable, has got genuine pace to get in behind. So Vladimir Coufal can't switch off. Offensively, let's hope we can get him in those advanced positions. I'll explain it in the tactical breakdown, but I do think pushing them back and keeping that press on is the way to try and break down Crystal Palace. On the right-hand side, it's going to be Craigie Dawson. Listen, he's been fantastic against West Brom. He's been fantastic against Burnley as well, teams that suited him. I think this is a slightly different proposition. Again, Burnley with Chris Wood and Barnes. I know Barnes has movement. It wasn't enough. It was very isolated. To be fair, I think it's going to be similar, particularly if Palace are pinned back at times and they hit on the counter. I think they'll be isolated enough. I think it's easy to deal with a player like Ayew that isn't going to stretch Craig Dawson. Aerially as well, it'll be an easier duel for him. The Zaha issue's the problem. And I think West Ham, particularly in those defensive midfield positions, can't afford to switch off, because as good as Craig Dawson has been in terms of his aerial duels, in terms of his relationship as well with Angelo Ogbonna, I haven't seen him yet come up against a real mobile strike force. And the problem is with Wilfred Zaha is because he's given such a license to play off that line, not necessarily to play as a direct number 9. Again, I don't want Craig drawn out of position. I don't think he will be. I saw it against Southampton for the first 10 minutes where he tried to get that ball off Danny Ings. Again, I think he's got to be disciplined in this game. But I think he'll have enough protection, if I'm honest. I think Declan Rice dealt with Zaha quite well last time. Left-hand side, no surprises once again. Angelo Ogbonna, a rock this season. I think it'll probably be an easier afternoon with somebody like an Andre Ayew. The problem is, of course, the inverted run of Andros Townsend, particularly if they get him behind on the left-hand side. I think Angelo Ogbonna and his relationship with Craig Dawson is crucial. I think actually in terms of the back four in general, that understanding of when to step back in the press and deal with trying to a ball over the top, and equally their positioning from the low block is crucial. And I think we've shown that we've been very effective in terms of that. I worry about late runners. Naturally, as anybody would, I think Palace can commit men forward in the box, particularly when in the final third and looking to get deliveries in. I think aerially, it's going to be an interesting duel, particularly from set pieces with him, Scott Dann, Gary Cahill. But Angelo is very, very strong from that aspect. And I think as well, we'll talk about, West Ham pressing up a little bit and trying to keep a bit of a higher line. I think Angelo has shown that even though he can possibly be beaten for pace, and he probably less so down that right from an Andre Ayew, I think his anticipation, his positioning, his dealings with one-to-one, his kind of experience is what gets him out of holes, as does Vladimir Soufal. So I am comfortable with obviously Angelo Ogbonna playing. He has been one of our best players this season. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. Left-hand side will be Aaron Cresswell. Again, I'm interested to see with Cresswell in terms of how, if I can actually find him on this, there he is, Aaron Cresswell. I think it's interesting. We talk about Cresswell's positioning. I think it does come down to the lack of athleticism. And I'm not digging him out because he's created some of the most chances in the Premier League from a full-back position, and at times even that left centre-back side. I think he has that tendency to come central. My concern would be that if Palace try to press up against West Ham and push Joe Wall forward, and he's quite conservative, to be honest, from that position, that he gets a bit drawn in, that Palace can get opportunities in the box, and at which stage you'd feel that they can commit enough men to cause West Ham some issues, even though we are strong aerially. So I'll be interested to see from an athletic point of view and a positioning point of view how he deals with Townsend's inverted runs. I think he's going to, again, rely on someone like Pablo Fornals. I think, to be fair to Pablo, he does protect Cresswell a lot. He is very good at it. His positioning is better. And I watched him the other day, and I think actually, again, I'm not getting into he's our best player, but I just think his work rate off the ball is phenomenal. The support he offers as a left-sided attacking midfield player is crucial. And again, I expect Cresswell to be protected. But there's no reason why Palace can't cause us issues. So I think that whilst we can press up, I think we do need to be wary of that. And I think obviously Pablo Fornals, if he plays on that left-hand side, needs to be switched on. Let's get to the two centre defensive midfield positions. Let's start with the right-hand side. Declan Rice, phenomenal. I thought he was really good against Palace. He's been really good in a lot of these games. And, I think, we speak about it in streams, watch-alongs, fans' voice. I think not only is he someone that's defensively very, very aware that can play on that low block. We see him dealing with Wilfred Zaha last time. I think he's press resistant. If Palace try to press West Ham a little bit, he can beat the press. He can travel with the ball. I think that's crucial in this game. I think if West Ham can break lines, particularly with the two midfielders of Palace, I think it causes them issues. It allows us to get bodies in beyond. It draws them out of position a little bit. I think you saw that last time, not only with Declan Rice pressing up, but Manu Lanzini playing in a 10 role, advancing a little bit more, trying to push them back. So I think Declan, of course, naturally, defensively, has to protect Craig Dawson, has to protect Soufal, and I'm no doubt that he will. But I think in terms of initiating that press, beating the press of Palace and trying to get him beyond both Milivojevic or James McCarthur, I think that's actually crucial to breaking down Crystal Palace and trying to break their structure very, very quickly. But the timing to do that is so short because they are so well drilled, and fair play to Hodgson, they are a tough side to break down. Again, Tommy Souček, we're very fortunate to have him. He's an unbelievable player. I think in the last couple of games, you see his positioning, particularly against Burnley. I think his athleticism, again, I guess it's a simple point, is his best characteristic. But not only that, I think his ability to get back in those defensive positions and commit a body forward and break lines is actually so important for West Ham. We talk about at times playing against teams in low blocks. I think Souček creates that run, drags them out of position. I'll be interested to see in this game if he can get in beyond the attacking midfielders at times. And, you particularly look at some of the goals that West Ham have scored. Bowen's playing in inverted positions. Souček is trying to get in the box as well. I think that's crucial for West Ham. I think we can't make it an easy game, for everything to be played in front of Crystal Palace. And Souček offers that aerial threat. He can make that run in behind, almost to the back post as well. I think if he can break the line as well and beat McCarthur in the press, that's where West Ham will get space just in front of their back four, and equally it'll give an opportunity to get a ball into Mikel Antonio. Because once you break that midfield line, then you're asking questions of that back four. Yes, they play incredibly central. Yes, there'll be a narrow block, but it will actually begin to vacate even options on the wide areas if the fullbacks push on or if the wide players are there, and equally it will allow Mikel Antonio possibly to drift in behind. So I think from an offensive point of view, he's going to be absolutely crucial. We can't afford to have him in too deep of positions. I know that at times, particularly if Palace push West Ham back, that may be the result. But I just feel like in this game, if West Ham are going to break Crystal Palace down, Souček's runs are so crucial. Even the intention of the runs draws them a little bit out of shape. The attacking midfield three, I think this will be fairly routine. Pablo Fornals on the left-hand side. He did get taken off, to be fair. He did get taken off against Crystal Palace last time. And I see why. I think as good as Pablo's work rate is, his defensive awareness for an attacking midfielder has grown in this David Moyes side. I think the reason why he played side Benrahma on the left was that he could go and take on and try and pin back a Joel Ward. And as good as Fornals is, playing an inverted role, not being able to really use the pace that he doesn't have, unfortunately, to get him beyond, means that Joel Ward's much more comfortable, that Palace can press up. There isn't the fear of him trying to get him behind. I think even Said Benrahma, isn't necessarily a pacey player, but just the fact that he can try and get him beyond, has got the genuine one-on-one ability to beat a man, was enough to force Joel Ward back. Again, I think his role in this game will be trying to deal with that inverted run of Andros, Townsend and protecting Creswell a little bit, particularly when Palace have got the ball in West Ham's final third. I think offensively, I'm not sure how much he can offer against the conservative Palace side. I always think that Pablo Fornals against sides that press up against West Ham is crucial because of his willingness to press and because of his defensive protection. I've got no doubt he'll play in this game. I kind of feel like I'm not sure how he's going to get into it from an offensive standpoint. But equally, possibly he could pick up spaces. I think he could, in transition, possibly in between the pocket, between the sort of the defence and the midfield of Palace, maybe. But those situations are so rare against Crystal Palace because they are so defence first. Said Benrahma in the 10 role, I think. And there's been rumours of Jesse Lingard, and I'm not sure where he fits into an attacking midfield three. But yeah, while he's here, obviously, Benrahma will play the 10. I think Benrahma's improved massively in recent games. I do believe he'll be a bit of a game changer in this game, just because of the fact that he can play between the lines. Particularly if you look at Declan Rice and Souček, if they force Milivojevic and James McCarthur out of position, Benrahma is going to find that space. I think as well what he showed against Burnley, he can drop into deep areas. He's got an eye for a pass. I think he's actually becoming more decisive in terms of his final pass and delivery in behind. I think the quality of the ball for Yarmolenko, I know it's different opposition, really encouraged me. And very, very similar in a low block, possibly how Crystal Palace will play. I think Benrahma's willingness to play the ball and find that pocket and play the pass could be the pass that undoes Crystal Palace. It's so rare because of the way they'll play. But, I think Benrahma's got the quality. I think from distance, he's clearly got the shot. The issue is the narrow block. And naturally, even when he plays on the left, he's an inverted player. So it's not really the best game for him. But in terms of quality, playing between the lines, I think I was massively encouraged with the attacking midfield three against Doncaster. Different level of opposition, but just the style of play and how we dealt with it, and the movement and the fluidity of those midfield three. Possibly we might see this against Crystal Palace. It's a tactic that works so well. You'd hope that we can try and incorporate it, but naturally the level's a lot higher. The organisation's a little bit better, and I don't think they're going to be drawn out of position too often. Right-hand side, Jarrod Bowen. Listen, I think he's got a lot of work defensively in this game, and for sometimes his decision-making that's off. His work rate's phenomenal. And I think, you look at that left-hand side of Palace, Eze, the movement of Zaha. I think it offers a real opportunity, if I'm honest. I think it's different in this game because Van Aanholt possibly doesn't play. And it's difficult to see necessarily how Bowen exploits the space in behind, albeit he does have that ability. I think defensively, in terms of his positioning and coming a little bit central to deal with the likes of Eze, to possibly deal with Zaha, can break up Crystal Palace's play, stop them getting in possession, stop them trying to press up as a line and put pressure on West Ham and keep them in their own half. And listen, when they did that last time, we couldn't create enough chances, we couldn't get enough men forward. But I think Bowen's sort of work rate, his ability on the ball, his ball carrying strength, can drive with the ball and push West Ham a little bit further up, could be really, really crucial in this game. The key difference here is he's got Mikel Antonio in front of him, a willing runner that can get him beyond and stretch. And listen, if he can play off Mickey, he can play him into a channel and come central as he naturally will in transition, then I think West Ham have got a chance on the counter. But he's so important defensively, as we all know. Deliveries, his finishing has been... His decision-making and finishing has been poor, but we know his finishing can be good. And again, I think the only issue is once they get in that shape, how does he get him beyond? But unlike Pablo Fornals, despite being a predominantly left-footed player on the right, I think he can get him beyond Mitchell. I think the problem is he's got good positioning, so I'd expect Bowen to try and get into the box, make a late run, particularly if we get a crossing from the left, and possibly cause a few issues there. But listen, nonetheless, he's obviously our first choice, and quite rightly so. Up front, he's had a nice long break. Mikel Antonio, I'm hoping he's, the break, the minutes he's played, he comes in really match sharp. And I think he's an interesting prospect in this game. The ability for him to hold up the ball, introduce West Ham, allow them to press onto Crystal Palace. Equally, his movement in behind. Look at the mobility of Dan and Gary Cahill. Despite playing in that narrow block, someone like Mickey can get him beyond. Do you feel that if West Ham can push up, Ben Rama can find space that Mikel Antonio's even willingness to get him beyond is going to force Crystal Palace out of position? And I think that will be the key difference in this game in terms of getting open play chances. Again, we know his strengths even in the box. I've been really encouraged actually as well. I think we talk about his general quality from hold up play and bringing people in, but I think him in the last couple of games against Burnley and West Brom, playing on the shoulder, so crucial, that position. It gives West Ham something to play in beyond and stretch teams. And listen, I'm excited to see him play in this game. He is going to be fully fit. I hope so. He's had a nice rest, particularly from the Doncaster game. He's going to be big. He's a big game player for us. And even if we sit in a low block at times and Palace do press against us, I think he can break the line, particularly between the two centre midfielders. Again, I can't imagine Palace are going to commit their fullbacks too far forward, but you look at somebody like Ward, even if Mickey has a tendency to sometimes come over to the left, you'd back him for pace against Ward. So again, he is our key man, as he always is, and I expect him to make a little bit of a difference in this game. So, getting on to a score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 West Ham. I think we get a goal... possibly from a Jarrah Bowen back post, we get him beyond, Mickey creates something, possibly, and maybe late on, when the game possibly gets a little bit stretched, maybe we get a set piece or a delivery and West Ham take full advantage as we did in the previous game. I think it'll be different. I think Moyes will have learned. I think this team has adapted a little bit more to the 4-2-3-1. I think Moyes understands how to play against Palace. Really encouraged in terms of, even I know the Doncaster game is such a strange example to a degree because it's League One opposition, but I just feel like the difference in dealing with teams sitting in a defensive shape could mean that West Ham are a little bit more on the attacking foot, willing to play a different way, willing to break teams down in a different way. I think we'll be able to nullify Crystal Palace. The reason why I say that is I think they are predominantly left-sided. I think without Van Aanholt, they can't create overloads in the right-hand side, albeit we are quite strong on that right-hand side. If Benteke doesn't play, you lose the aerial threat. It means that even if Ward can get a delivery in, I think West Ham can deal with it comfortably. Also, you've got the fact that Craig Dawson and Ogbonna's relationship in terms of positioning, creating a low block at times, aerially. I think we're going to snuff out a lot of Crystal Palace's play. I can see Zaha getting frustrated. I can see Eze being forced back a little bit. And I think we can possibly get a clean sheet. But I am excited for this game. I do think this is a good opportunity to get 3 points, push West Ham further up the table, and obviously we go into a huge game on Sunday and even on Tuesday. Liverpool and Aston Villa are completely different, tactically, completely different opposition. But I feel like, getting 3 points in this game, keeping up our run as well, is going to make us fresh and we're getting there with the right mentality. So, on that note, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the West Ham Way YouTube channel. The tactical breakdown will be out very, very shortly. I've tried to keep the tactics a little bit separate in this sort of preview, but check that one out. That'll be a theme going forward. And until next time, take care.